Hey, good morning, and thank you for joining B2B Sales and Marketing FriTalks. As usually, every second Friday, me and Roland, together with our guests, share insights, best practices, and anecdotes from B2B related companies and related topics. And this time, I think we both, at least with Roland, are super excited to have our special guest who is an expert in the pricing strategies and the pricing models. And we have seen this topic popping up all the time, like how we should price our services, our products, and what would be the right way, especially when it comes to the entering an international markets, new markets, and so on and so forth. And we see quite a significant tendency, especially among Eastern European companies, to really use this kind of less expensive pricing as a one of the key strategies for them to attract new customers. But is it really worth it? And that's the question what we would like to address today, together with our special guest, as I already mentioned, the founder of the Soft Fight, Emanuel Martonca. And welcome, Manuel. And
welcome.
Yeah, let's jump into the topic. But before that,
thank you,
it would be
great to be here.
Yeah, it would be really good that you maybe introduce yourself a little bit to the audience, so that from where this specific competence is coming. So why did you specialize on the pricing? What actually was the reason for that?
It's actually the intersection of two tracks that I've been on in my life. One was that I worked as a product manager in a bank for a long time, and that helped me learn about pricing. And then for many years, I worked in software companies selling services and products. And that's where I brought them together and realized that I can help companies and founders, especially in our part of the world, to be able to capture more of the value that they already create for their clients. And this is one of the issues why so many software tech companies in Southern and Eastern Europe sell with low prices, because they don't have the optimal view, and they don't see the value that they create for the customers, or they don't know how to monetize it. And that's something that we can help correct.
Yes. Can you talk a bit from your perspective? What is the impact of not paying attention to pricing in companies? What problems they are facing? I have a list on my own, but I would like to also hear your perspective.
Yeah, trying to keep it simple and looking at the biggest impact, you can basically do this wrong in two ways. Either you price too low, which means that you have customers, you grow, but you're making a lot less money than you should, which will then impact the long-term viability, and it will not help you to have enough money for marketing, for sales, for growing the company.
Right.
The other direction is when you price your product or services too high, and then you don't get customers. And this can also be combined with simplicity over complexity. Sometimes if you make it too simple, it might seem like a good idea, but actually you're going to lose. And if you make it too complex, again, you're going to lose customers. So you need to find the right balance between the level of the price in terms of the actual amount that you charge, but also the pricing model. And many times the pricing model is even more important than the amount.
Yes, like from my perspective, what I see in market, and I have been vocal about that for quite a while, is indeed that pricing is a problem, and many IT companies, particularly in services, they have set their pricing for basically good and stable times. If orders keep on coming, if I have a queue of customers standing outside of the doors, I can survive with such pricing quite comfortably. But if market downturn happens, as we feel has happened, if sales is on decline, if you don't have a queue of customers standing outside your doors, if you are charging too little, you cannot suddenly, find investment in marketing, in sales, start building up brand awareness, etc., etc. So a part of other things like owners not making money or making less money than it's possible, they also risk their business, because if something happens in market, if they have been pricing too low, they may just sink their business altogether.
That's one of the tragedies of pricing, is that it's such an important aspect of the way we do business, and it has an outsized impact on the profitability, on the viability of the company, but people typically don't think about it, and they ignore it for long stretches of time until it hurts, and then you can still make corrections and you can still improve, obviously, but it would have been much better to think about it at the right moment. And also, when you mention good times, I've seen many companies who are still doing okay, even in the current context. And one of their difficulties is that they cannot raise prices when they should. Their costs are increasing, they still have customers, they still have projects, but because of hybrid work and remote work and the fact that now anyone can work for any big company anywhere in the world, salaries have increased a lot, but their prices have not. So the only ones which are squeezed are the owners and the company itself, which has much lower margins than they should.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now that we established the problem, what would be your approach? What would you suggest them to do? What should they start with? Or how to wrap their head around the issue of pricing, which often is quite complex thing.
It is complex, and there's also this wrong impression that pricing is more art than science, which for engineers and methodical business people leads them to think that, okay, there's not much I can do. I'm not an artist, I'm not a magician, I don't have experience, I don't have enough intuition about it, so it's better not to touch it. They typically apply very simplistic models that they see either with the competition or successful companies, without looking at their context, without taking into account that maybe something that worked 5 years ago will not work this year, and so on. So this is the problem by itself. The solution is rather simple. They just need to spend more time on it. The more time you think about pricing, read about pricing, listen to podcasts, listen to talks like we're having now, discussing about it with the customers, discussing with the colleagues, the more time you spend on it, the more you realize that there are many options. There's no one formula that you can easily apply. You just need to find the right formula for your context, for your objectives. And that's where they need to start from, the business objectives. And then based on that, go step by step, look at the customers, the value they provide, the pricing model that is appropriate for that type of context, and then try to validate, to test the experiment. And then they will surely find not the perfect model. It's very difficult to reach the point where you have perfect pricing and all the problems are solved. But you can be much closer to that point, and you can have an optimum model.
But Manuel, so looking at these pricing models, as you mentioned, that many people just follow what is kind of, let's say, already exists in the industry, right? Let's say an hourly rate, or I don't know, some
per
time and material
seat
approach,
pricing
or
for
per
SaaS,
seat, or whatever else, especially if you're talking about the SaaS company, right?
Yeah.
But can you just maybe mention from your experience, what are these typical models, what maybe could be considered if you think of the SaaS business in particular, or maybe services as well?
On the product side, for companies that have a product, a platform where they can sell a subscription, these are the two models that mostly used are subscription, where you have an amount per month which covers some features, some functionality, whether it's with different packages or not, it doesn't matter, it's still a subscription. And you have per seat pricing, where you pay for each user that you have in the platform. In the past few years, there's been a positive dynamic of moving towards usage-based pricing, where you don't have the number of users as the main metric, but you find the metric which is relevant to that particular context and relationship. And the best example of that is cloud computing, where you pay for CPU resources based on how much you use. It's not so much per seat, it's not about the number of users, it's the usage that's important. And this has been applied by many companies in many sectors of the software world. On the services side, hourly billing was the norm, and it still is for many companies, but it's definitely not the right one for most of them. And you can use, for shorter term projects, you can do productized services. For medium term projects, you can do sprint-based billing, or per module, per feature, to have a model where you link the value that you provide to the customer with the actual billing cycle. And for much longer contracts, you can have retainers, whether that's monthly, quarterly, or different combinations. But in any case, there is no one size fits all, and that's again the problem with pricing, is that people take simplistic models and they apply them regardless of their context, and that's worse than spending a lot of time thinking about it and doing something that maybe it's not perfect, but it's still better.
Yes, from my side, I can say that when researching B2B technology buyers' behavior, what we see again and again is that actually the relationship of pricing with price is extremely weird. Now we had actually Andres found the research recently. We actually talked about it once, which basically there was a survey or research of buyers before they make a purchase. So they were asked how important are different criteria in making decisions, and they said that pricing actually is the most important criteria. And here's the trick. Actually, I think that if you ask most buyers, that's what they would say. And if you ask your sellers, talk with their buyers and ask what's the most important before they have done purchase, they will say, yes, pricing is most important. So it can lead to company mistakenly assume that pricing is so important that they have to cut costs, they have to charge their customers very little, and so on. However, in the same research, when they asked after the purchase, what were the criteria or why specific offering or vendor was selected, pricing was not even in the top 5 criteria whatsoever. Important things were understanding of buyer's business model, explaining the product, marketing content, etc., etc. And all these are subjective things which relate to value. And basically, I would say that in unless you are selling, let's say, oil or other tradable goods, where it's possible to establish the value and respectively price and demand and supply, pricing is highly manipulative, and actually marketing is the right way to invest in awareness, in value perception, and so on, which again supports the increase of pricing.
This is actually the key to this problem, which is the value perception. And when you look through the lens of pricing, you can and you should put an economic spin on it. So it's not only about value as a subjective matter that can just be described, or you just hope that people will buy or like what you're selling. You can quantify the value that you create, especially in B2B, whether it's services or products, it doesn't matter. Your clients are businesses, which means that they want to make money. And many of their decisions, internal decisions, are driven by competing interests for the same budget and for the same investment resources. What you can do is to evaluate how much value you create for them, quantify that value, and then position your pricing and express it in a way so that it's clear for the buyer that what they're getting is a very good deal, because they're paying a lot less than how much they're making. And whether they're making that amount by having higher revenues or lower costs or just mitigating some risk or solving operational issues, it doesn't matter. What's important is that you quantify this, because if you don't quantify it as a seller, the buyer will not do that. Most of the time, they will not have the time, the resources, the interest to quantify it. And that's why you have to do it, so that anytime you put a price in front of the buyer, your price is not compared either with your lower cost competition, which maybe doesn't provide the same type of value, or it's compared with something else that you cannot control. Like the license they paid last month for a completely different type of software, which has nothing to do with what you're doing. But if that is their anchor and that's what they're using to compare you with, then you already lost. Yeah? And that's why you need to quantify this value and put a number in front of the customer, which is realistic, which is credible, which can be achieved, and at the same time puts your price in a good light.
Yeah, but
I think this value part, what you just mentioned, is one of the probably most critical and most underestimated among those companies what both of us are working. And I can just for illustration give you my example, and you just reminded me also about that when I was interviewing a few customers on behalf of my client, right, and the client itself was really kind of cautious about pricing. He was assuming that actually customers are maybe thinking that he is overpriced and stuff like that. And the funny thing is that when I just directly asked, hey, what do you think about the pricing of this particular SaaS service? And the feedback, not just from one customer, but from several of them, was that, actually, I don't care. I even a bit worried that it's too cheap. And I'm wondering how do they keep, developing this product? Because the clients, the customers of my client were like big enterprises, and the amount what they annually were paying for this particular service was, around this minor error what they in general have in their IT budget. So it was so insignificant in context of their IT budget that actually they were not looking at the pricing as one of the key, let's say, elements. Instead, for them, it was much more important to have assurance that product will be developed, that there is a quality behind that there is a qualified team who can support them, and they eliminate any possible risks which can actually create possible errors or problems with the product. That was much more important and heavily underestimated by this particular client when he was assuming about his pricing strategy.
Yeah, but to have that kind of insight and to have that visibility into the buying process of your customers, you need to get out, you need to ask them, you need to talk to them about pricing. Yeah? And most people avoid the topic. They don't want to discuss about it. To illustrate this, I have a very simplistic way of talking about this when we think about a company at the beginning, whether it's a new startup, somebody who just wants to start, whether it's an established company that wants to launch a new product. What's the typical approach? It's we have an idea, either we build it or we describe it on paper and we say, okay, these are the services we want to provide. Then we calculate the costs, because it's easy to make an Excel file and just add up how much it's going to cost. And then we say, if these are the costs, this is the price, we add the margin on top. And then we start thinking, oh, now we need the marketing team, or we need someone to describe the value, to package it, and then we'll hire a sales team to find customers. This is the typical approach. What if we do it the other way around? What if we start with the customers? We decide these are the people we think we can help because they have this problem. Then we try to understand as quickly as possible how much they value solving that problem, how much they are willing to pay to have that problem solved for them. Based on this, we set a price. We then go and see what do we actually need to do, how much it would cost to do it like that. And then we have two options. Yeah? Let's say that they are willing to pay 100. If our costs are 20, then it's great. We have enough margin. There's enough room to build a good business, to pay for marketing, to get to customers. We're good. We can go and build the product or the service. If they are willing to pay 100 and it would cost us 80, then we don't have the business. Yeah, we should just stop. Either we try to find other customers who maybe are willing to pay more for the same thing, or we find a way to do it cheaper. But otherwise, we don't have a business. But we have to look at it from the other perspective.
Yes, and I think another issue is that many companies are, once they start getting negative feedback from their customers saying that the price is too high, they immediately panic and they think about discounting and so on. They very rarely try to figure out if the value was properly communicated.
Exactly.
If they were actually talking with customer who is ideal, who fits ideal customer profile, basically for whom the product or service was designed for, and very often they take it badly. Like my opinion is that that there's great benefit of having, let's say, larger number of leads that you can actually serve, and then be very selective with whom you want to work, and also do not provide just discounts like that. Manu, what's your opinion about that? Is that a viable approach to actually basically live with the fact that some percentage of your customers actually cannot afford your product?
Absolutely. That should be a decision from the beginning. When you design your service or your product, aside from the list of ideal customer profile and what else we want to call it, of who the customers are and how much they're going to pay, and you design the offer for them, you also need to decide who is not a good customer, and you know they will not be able to afford it. And if feedback comes from those types of customers, you just ignore it because you don't care about them. But even if you get feedback from customers you're looking for, and they still say your price is too high, the sales team comes back and says, no, we talked to customers, our prices are too high. Then my question would always be, okay, too high compared to what? Compared to how much they are willing to pay, compared to how much they were expecting to pay because they didn't have any references beforehand for this type of solution, compared to how much they can afford this year because it's not in their budget, so they don't have enough budget to pay for it, but they could pay next year, compared to what they pay for a similar solution that solves their problem, but it's much more expensive internally and have higher total cost of ownership. You always need to calibrate very well, understand too high price compared to what, and then you can decide. And if 100% of your customers that you're looking for say that the price is too high compared to how much they can afford, then you can decide to offer a lower value version of the same solution, so you can charge less but you also offer less, or you find other ways to make it work. But it's never, the solution is never discounting. The discount should be the last option for situations where you're like, I don't know, 3 days away from a critical moment, and if they don't sign now, you're going to lose them forever. So then, okay, give a 3%, 5%, whatever small discount you can give to make it work at the end. But if the discount is a part of the conversation from the beginning or from the middle of the sales process, then you have much bigger problems.
Yeah, it's actually, I think you can think about this price pressure or early requests for discounts as a sign that you have actually failed your marketing, your sales process, and you haven't been able to demonstrate value. Because if you are able to demonstrate value, if you are able to demonstrate specialization, price very quickly becomes like irrelevant, and irrelevant to such extent that you are actually able to charge multiple times more than you thought. If you package the product right, if you explain the value, if you are working with the right customer, and so on. And this we have heard a number of times from our guests here at FriTalks as well. And actually, if we talk about pricing, then last year we had a webinar about partnership management. And in partnership management, there's always a key question: okay, how much of the product value should I give away to our partners? And the logic here is the same. You have to do calculations. You have to be very, very analytical, understand their business, and so on. So I think in pricing, as in many other things, actually good analytics, understanding of fundamentals of economics plays a really, really huge role.
There's another important that. Please go ahead, Andrei.
Yeah, what I wanted to ask as well is, Manuel, that we can of course assume that we can ask customers and we can do all the experiments, but nevertheless, in reality, we all live in the world where there are a lot of alternatives, right, and a lot of competition and stuff like that. So From your perspective, at what stage of this pricing exercise you have to really do research and incorporate these market references into your pricing strategy? So, what would be your advice here?
From the very first step, and this is where targeting is critical, as is with for sales and marketing. Knowing who your audience is and who can who needs your solution and who can afford to pay for it is absolutely critical. But it's not a quest where you try to find it somewhere out there and you bumble around and you try to find it in the dark. It's actually it can be much more scientific and methodical, because you can define multiple possibilities of segments of customers, markets that you can work for. And then you can apply objective criteria to decide which are the sub-segments or the customer segments which are more likely to pay how much you are willing to charge, or how much you need to charge to make this a viable business. And that's when you decide, and you can go and test and experiment to validate that your assumptions are correct. But this can be done without building any product, without writing any line of code, without hiring any people. Yeah. And this is another big mistake that people make, which is that, no, we cannot think about pricing, we just need first customers. Now, until we have 10 customers, I'm not going to think about pricing. It's way too late. Yeah. You can and you should think about pricing from day one, because this will influence everything you do. What you build, when you build it, what costs you're going to have, everything will be influenced by pricing. So
it's a fundamental element for the business case. So how otherwise you can build anything if you don't have a business case, isn't it?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
Yes, and big mistake is just when you are launching business, looking at your costs, looking at what you can sell it for, and quickly becoming happy that I can make money. Yes, you can probably make money, but you cannot scale, because growth requires investment. And if you haven't built in from the very beginning in your business model sales and marketing costs, then you will end up perhaps having 10 customers in your near vicinity, in your own network, and you will never be able to go international. Simply there's no money for that, right?
Yeah, no investment capacity. Emanuel, another question I would like to ask is, because I have seen that there are some innovation, of course, there are a lot of innovation happening on the product side, when the product brings really something like unique value, unique capabilities and AI, as we can see now, and so on and so forth. On the other hand, there are really nice examples where the pricing has been used as actually innovation layer, right? And the product stays the same. And we have number of examples like this in recent years. But where the company has innovated is the way how do they charge, the way how do they actually deliver it to the client. One thing you mentioned about the usage-based, what is happening in the SaaS, however, it didn't really pick up it yet, at least. But can you maybe elaborate a little bit more on that part? So, from your experience, how much the pricing can be leveraged for the innovating the business model and overall product, and what is needed for that?
You're basically describing my life right now, because the only thing I can do from this position is to help companies optimize their pricing model without changing fundamentally what they already do. And that's what I'm typically looking at, which is you can describe any business, whether it's tech or otherwise, in a very simplistic way by saying they create value and they capture value. And value creation happens through engineering, product management, operations, logistics, everything that you do to create value for your customers. And then capturing that value back is also about communication, documenting the value you created, marketing, sales, but also a lot about the pricing model and pricing. And most of the successful pricing projects are those where you don't touch or you don't increase your costs in terms of what you're offering, and you don't change that in any meaningful way. You just repackage it and you present it in the right way to the right customers with the right pricing model. And sometimes that means just changing the metric, and that is enough. Yeah, moving from per seat to a hybrid model where you have subscription and usage based, or moving from per hour to sprint based pricing in services. Sometimes these models, obviously, they come with some consequences in terms of what you communicate and how you communicate it and your sales templates and so on. But these changes are typically much, much cheaper and easier to implement than any fundamental change you have to do in your product to change what you deliver.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
excellent.
Manuel, what would be, I mean, now some people, let's say, in our audience are hearing, they think, okay, we need to work with pricing, we could use some help. What are the ways to contact you or engage with you?
I write a weekly newsletter about pricing. I've been doing this for more than 2 years now. And that's the best way to keep pricing on your mind. Like every week I send an email, and it's like a weekly pill of reminding you that pricing is important and you have to think about it. And obviously on LinkedIn, I'm trying to be as active as I can, and I can answer questions and help people if they have specific requests or dilemmas around pricing.
So guys, everyone who is interested in getting more information and get smart in the pricing, just follow Emanuel on the LinkedIn, and I think then you will find all other possible ways how to engage with him. And I think even today you have a webinar. If this is not a big secret.
In less than 1 hour, I'm gonna do my weekly, my monthly webinar.
Get in touch with Manuel and find out how you can join this webinar to learn in depth on the pricing strategies. Otherwise, I would like really to thank you for coming and sharing and just, I believe that we just started this topic, and we definitely will continue this conversation, maybe in different formats, but I believe that this is so important topic that we need to devote much more time to that, and to explore these options in more details, because I believe we really have a huge opportunity for innovation and for optimization of the pricing elements in many industries and product categories and things like that. So thanks again for joining us. Everyone who would like to get more insights from B2B guests coming to our show, just feel free to follow ibd-consulting on the LinkedIn. But also we have a special hashtag what we use. It's a FriTalks, which can navigate you to all the previous episodes, to other related information on LinkedIn, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, all these live sessions are also available on the podcast platforms of your choice. So just search for B2B Sales and Marketing FriTalks and subscribe to that. And we will appreciate if you give some rating, feedback, and you share our work because with others, because for us it's also important, and we are looking forward to your feedback and to your potential questions. Thanks a lot. Have a great rest of the Friday, and we are back in 2 weeks for another conversation. And so looking forward to that.
See you in 2 weeks.
All the best, everyone. Bye bye.